Chapter 3. She screamed. The ghost of the lady in the gray shawl had her by the leg. Now she was going to carry Jenny into the clock, where she would live forever, listening for all of eternity to the tick-tock, along with the other spirits of this old house. She looked down. It wasn't a ghost. It was a ginger-colored cat. The cat pawed her again, softer this time, then rubbed its back against her jeans leg, mewing loudly. Jenny's heart was still pounding. Why didn't they tell me they had a cat? She reached down to pet it, but it ran away, tucking itself under a large sofa. She felt foolish screaming like that. She wasn't the screaming type. She took a deep breath and held it, the trick that usually worked when she wanted to calm herself. Had her scream disturbed Donnie? She ran up the creaking stairs and tiptoed into his room. He was still sleeping peacefully. He looked even more angelic when he slept. She was tempted to wake him up, tell him he could come downstairs and play until his parents came home. No, Jenny, you've got to show them you're responsible. She heard the animal howls again, closer this time, louder and longer. They seemed to be coming from the backyard. She crept over to Donnie's window, pushed back the curtains, and looked down. A spotlight on the side of the garage cast a narrow triangle of yellow light over the gravel driveway, a low woodpile, and the tall grass of the yard. Shadows from the trees danced over the grass, which leaned first this way, then that in the swirling wind. The howling had stopped. Jenny replaced the curtains, took one more look at Donnie, then walked quickly downstairs. She found the kitchen, the last room off the long back hallway, and turned on all the lights. It was the only modern room in the house, bright yellow and orange linoleum tile on the floor, newly painted white wooden cabinets, new appliances, even a microwave. I guess this is the only room they've been able to redo, Jenny told herself. She found a Coke in the refrigerator and a bag of nacho chips on the counter. Maybe I'll just stay in the kitchen all night, she thought. It's so much less creepy in here. But the kitchen stools were uncomfortable, and she had left her backpack in the den. And she realized that from way in the back of the house, she wouldn't be able to hear Donnie if he called from upstairs. So she carried her snack down the long hallway, through the living room with its creaking floors and annoying clock, and back to the den. Well, what shall I do now? She asked herself, dropping back down into the big white leather chair. I can't just sit around and listen to the wind howl and the shutters bang and think about how creepy it is here. She picked up the newspaper from the table next to the chair and scanned the front page. Oh, a headline made her gasp. Third babysitter attack has police on alert. She tossed the paper down without reading the story. Then she remembered that before leaving the house, she had grabbed a book to read. But what was it? She searched in her pack and pulled it out. Oh great, a Stephen King novel. Good choice, Jenny. That'll really cheer you up. She stuffed the book back into her pack and got up. Should she switch on the TV? No, she couldn't sit still. She decided to explore the living room for a while. She was walking past the soot-stained marble fireplace in front of the sofa, with the cushions that didn't match, when she heard the first footstep. She stopped. She wasn't sure she had heard it. Yes, another. This time she was sure. It was a footstep. A soft footstep. The cat again? No, the cat was curled up in a chair by the window. She listened. Silence now. So silent except for her breathing, except for the pounding of her heart, except for the ticking of the clock. So she had imagined it. Another ghost, another creature of her imagination. Stop it, Jenny, she said aloud. Stop imagining things. It's scary enough here without you trying to scare yourself. Another footstep. This one louder. This one closer. Someone was in the house. Someone was walking quietly, slowly, deliberately. She spun around and looked back to the den. Could she get there in time? Could she lock herself in the den? Could she call the police? Would they get to the house in time? Another footstep. She turned back to face the front hallway. The footsteps were coming from the stairs. She froze. She felt completely paralyzed by fear. So this is what it's like, she thought. So this is what it's like to be frightened to death. An image flashed into her mind. She was driving home with her mom late at night. They were in the old Pontiac. She must have been 5 or 6. They pulled into the driveway. A rabbit was standing at the top of the drive. Caught in the headlights, it froze. The poor creature became paralyzed, a statue of fear. It stood there staring into the headlights as the car came closer and closer. It didn't move a muscle until Jenny's mom turned the headlights off. Then it bounded away, its long ears standing straight up in the air. Another footstep on the stairs. Jenny was the rabbit now, frozen in front of the fireplace. She wanted to move. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream, but her fear held her in a tight grip. "Who?" She finally managed to make a sound. "Who's there?" Silence. Another footstep. "Who's there?" she called. Chapter 4. "Who's there?" Donnie stepped into the hallway. His cheeks were flushed from sleep. He had red leather slippers on his feet. One pajama leg had hitched up over his knee. "I woke up. I'm thirsty." Jenny took a deep breath. Her knees felt weak. She grabbed onto the mantel to steady herself. She didn't want Donnie to see that she had been afraid. She felt like laughing. Then she felt like crying. Then she felt like running up and hugging him. What an idiot she had been. Footsteps. Of course there were footsteps on the stairs. How could Donnie come down the stairs without making footsteps? How could she have forgotten that she wasn't alone in the house? He stared at her from the entranceway to the living room. "I'm thirsty," he repeated. His voice was hoarse from sleep. He had a very devilish look on his face. She walked over to him and smoothed her hand through his hair. "You shouldn't sneak down the stairs." "I didn't sneak. I walked. Slowly. I didn't know where you were. I didn't want to scare you." Didn't want to scare her. She squeezed his shoulder playfully. He giggled. "Are you sure you didn't want to scare me?" she asked. "Well, maybe a little." He giggled some more. "Are you the kind of guy who likes scaring his babysitters?" she asked, starting to feel a little more normal. "Maybe." They headed toward the kitchen, her hand on his pajama shoulder. He felt so warm, like a little stove. "Well, I'm glad to see you," she said. What an understatement. "What do you want to drink? Apple juice?" "No, I brushed my teeth tonight." "So?" "So apple juice tastes funny after you brush your teeth. I want milk." "Okay, milk it is." In the kitchen, he climbed up on one of the stools while she poured out his glass of milk. He drank it quickly in 3 long gulps, then wiped the milk mustache off his upper lip with the sleeve of his pajamas. "Want to play a game or something?" he asked. "Get serious. You get right back up to bed," she told him. "Did your other babysitters play games with you late at night?" "Maybe," he said, the devilish grin reappearing. "Tell the truth, Donnie," Jenny said with mock sternness. "Well, no," he admitted sheepishly. Then he quickly added, "I'll only go back to bed if you'll tuck me in again." "Okay, that's a deal," Jenny agreed. It took a long time to tuck him in. First, he insisted on showing her all of his stuffed animals and telling her their names. When she finally got him into bed and under the covers, he said, "Kiss me good night." She bent down and kissed him on the forehead. "Good night." "Now, tell me a story," he demanded. "What? Tell me a story. I can't go to sleep without a story." "But, Donnie, that wasn't the deal. The deal was for me to tuck you in." "Now the deal is for you to tell me a story," he insisted. She saw that he was a tough bargainer. There was probably no use in arguing with him. "What kind of stories do you like?" she asked, sighing resignedly and settling down at the foot of his narrow, stuffed animal-cluttered bed. "Scary stories." "Of course." "Okay, let me think." She didn't have to think too long. She was good at thinking up stories. It was one of the real advantages of having a wild imagination. "This is a story about a little boy who liked to scare his babysitter," she began. Donnie laughed. "I like it," he said, sitting up. "If you don't lie down and try to sleep, I won't finish it," Jenny threatened. He plopped back onto his pillow. "This little boy was about your age, about your height, just about your weight. In fact, he looked just like you." She scooted up closer to him so she could whisper the story. "And this little boy had a very mischievous personality. He liked playing tricks on his babysitter and scaring her to death. He would sneak down the stairs as quietly as he could, just to frighten her. He would make loud noises and jump out at her from dark doorways, and run into the room and leap onto her shoulders from behind when she thought he was sound asleep. One night, he scared his babysitter so badly, her hair turned white, and one night, he scared his babysitter so badly, her eyes popped out, and he had to find them and push them back in for her. And one night, he scared his babysitter so badly, she jumped right out of her skin, and it took her hours to put it back on." Donnie thought that was hilarious. He laughed until he had tears in his eyes. He made Jenny tell that part again. and then again. So one night, the little boy's babysitter decided to get even. She decided that it was her turn to scare the little boy. Jenny scooted even closer so she could whisper as quietly as possible. She thought and thought about how to scare the little boy. Should she dress up in a gorilla costume and pop out of his clothes closet? No, not scary enough. Should she invite a monster to come in and chase the little boy around the house? No, not scary enough. Should she take off her skin again and dance around in her bones? No, not scary enough. Jenny leaned down very close to Donnie's ear and softly whispered the conclusion to her story. And then the babysitter finally got an idea. She finally thought of the scariest trick of all. Very quietly, she crept into the little boy's bedroom. Very quietly, she leaned down over his bed where he was about to fall asleep. And very quietly, quiet as a mouse, almost silently, almost as silent as a soft breeze, almost so silently you couldn't hear her, she shouted, "Boo!" Jenny shouted the word boo at the top of her lungs. The story received the proper reaction. Donnie leaped up in surprise and nearly fell out of bed. Then he laughed uproariously. "Tell it again," he insisted when he had finally stopped laughing. Pleased with her success, Jenny headed to the bedroom door. "No. Go to sleep now." "Come on, Jenny, tell it again." "No. Next time. I'll be back on Saturday night, and I'll tell it to you then. Only I'll make it scarier." He made her promise 3 times that she wouldn't forget. Then he finally settled down to go to sleep. Jenny was smiling as she started down the stairs. That was a good story, she told herself. I'm going to be good at this job. The thought gave her special pleasure. Her mother was always accusing her of being irresponsible, of living in a world of daydreams and not being able to handle anything real. But her mother was wrong. Jenny was proving that. Her smile faded when she heard a loud knock on the front door. She stopped on the bottom step and grabbed the banister. She could feel the fear grip her body, the same fear she had felt in the living room when she had heard the quiet footsteps. The knock was repeated, harder this time. Who could it be? It was too early for the Hagans to be home, and they wouldn't knock. Could she see out? No, the door was solid wood, no window or peephole. Whoever was out there pounded again. 3 hard raps, then 3 more. It sounds like a burglar, Jenny thought. A picture of a guy in a black and purple striped sweater, wearing a black mask over his eyes, carrying a bag of burglar tools, flashed into her mind. No, it's not like a burglar. A burglar wouldn't knock, unless it was a very cautious burglar, and he was checking to make sure no one was home before breaking in. So if I don't answer the door, he'll think no one is home, and he'll... It's the babysitter attacker, the one in the papers. No, don't be stupid. How would he know there's a babysitter here tonight? It's my first night on the job. It's the police. A truck carrying toxic waste turned over outside, and they have to evacuate the neighborhood immediately. If I don't answer the door, I'll breathe the toxic fumes and be turned into a drooling mutant. 3 more hard raps on the door. Jenny pressed her cheek against the door. The wood felt surprisingly cold. Who is it? No reply. She could hear the wind roaring outside the door. Who is it? She repeated. She didn't want to shout too loudly for fear of waking up Donnie. Who is it? Who's there? She pressed her ear against the door again. The wind was howling too loudly to hear anything else. I'd better open the door, she told herself. She looked for a chain to attach, so that an intruder couldn't just push his way in. But there was none. 3 more knocks. She took a deep breath and pulled the door open a crack. Oh! The cry escaped her lips before she could stop it. The white porch light revealed a short but powerfully built man. Despite the cold and gusting winds, he was wearing an oversized red plaid lumberjack shirt. His eyebrows caught Jenny's attention first. They were bushy and black, as wide as caterpillars. He had thick black hair, slicked down with some kind of grease, and brushed straight back so that it looked more like a helmet than hair. His nose was bent and leaned to the left. It looked as if it had been broken several times, or maybe removed and put back on wrong. He had a stubble of black beard on his cheeks, and an unlit stub of a cigar tucked between his teeth. He reeked of the aroma of cigars. It must have been soaked into his shirt and jeans. He looked as startled to see Jenny as she was to see him. Who are you? He asked, his voice surprisingly deep but gravelly. Somehow he was able to speak and still keep the cigar butt clamped between his teeth. I'm the babysitter, Jenny said, struggling to remember exactly who she was. Who are you? He looked at her suspiciously. He didn't seem to hear her question. Everything okay in there? Yes, she said, squeezing the doorknob until her hand hurt. Can I help you with something? Dumb question, but what else should she say? No, I'm sorry. I'm Willers. I'm the neighbor. Oh, the neighbor. Jenny started to feel a little relieved, but then she thought, maybe he's lying, and her fear returned. I thought Mike and Mary were home. He chewed on the cigar butt and looked her up and down. No, they're out tonight. They go out on Thursday nights. Why did I tell him that? How stupid. Now he knows that I'll be alone here with Donnie every Thursday night. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I'm sorry to disturb you this time of night. I thought I saw a prowler out back. He pointed a stubby finger toward the woods on the right. Did you happen to hear anything? No, not a thing. Was he really the neighbor? Did he really hear a prowler? Was he the prowler? I thought I saw someone. There's been a prowler in the neighborhood. He removed the tiny cigar butt from his teeth and jammed it into his shirt pocket. Mind if I come in and look around? Yes. No. I don't think so. I don't know you. I don't think the Hagans would. Everything's okay. I didn't hear anything. He squinted at her suspiciously, his thick, black eyebrows folding above his eyes like upside-down V's. You sure? Yeah, positive. It was nice of you to be concerned, though. Thank you. She started to close the door. He took a step forward. Her heart jumped up to her throat. Was he going to try to push his way in? What was he going to do? Why was he staring at her like that? If you hear anything, I'll be nearby, he said, backing down. He looked into her eyes. I'm always nearby. Was that a threat? Why did he stare at her like that when he said it? Or was she just imagining that he meant more than he said? Good night, she said. She closed the door quickly, slamming it hard without realizing it, and locked it. Then she slumped down on the first step and buried her head in her arms, trying to catch her breath. Ah! She screamed when she felt the hand on her shoulder. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, Donnie said. I'm thirsty again. Chapter 5. So, did you about the what? I can't understand you, Laura. Laura held up a finger, signaling for Jenny to wait a second while she finished swallowing. I had a mouthful of pizza. Sorry. What I said was, did you tell the father about the neighbor? Tell Mr. Hagan? No, he's much too nervous already. I didn't want to make him even more nervous. Besides, what's to tell? The neighbor came over to make sure everything was okay. Big deal. But Jenny, you said you thought... But that's my problem, don't you see? I'm always thinking too much, thinking crazy things. So the neighbor was a little shifty looking. Lots of neighbors are shifty looking. It doesn't mean they're going to break into your house and cut you up into little pieces or anything. Laura replied. Huh? They were sitting in the back booth at the pizza oven. It was 3:30 on Friday afternoon, and the small restaurant was usually filled with Harrison High students by now. But for some reason, only a few kids were there today. Jenny and Laura liked the back booth despite the torn seat cushions, and the fact that it was directly across from the restroom, because from there, they could see who was in all the other booths and who came in the door without being easily seen themselves. Do you think this is real cheese? Laura pulled a long strand of it with her 2 fingers. It stretched for about 2 feet before it tore. I don't know. Of course. What else would it be? I saw on TV where some pizza places were using fake cheese. You know, artificial cheese, all chemicals and stuff. It tastes like cheese. A little, Jenny said, taking a large bite for scientific purposes. Why do you always have such upsetting news? If you can't believe in pizza, what can you believe in? I'd like to believe in him, Laura said, dropping her pizza slice to stare at a tall boy with wavy blonde hair, wearing tight-fitting 501s and a leather bomber jacket. Who is he? Look at that smile. He looks like he just walked off a movie set. Never seen him, Jenny said, concentrating on her pizza. She'd been starving all day. What's with you and Eugene? Who? Laura, stop staring at him like that. You think I'm being too obvious? Well, the staring part isn't so bad, Jenny told her, but the drooling is not very subtle. I asked you about Eugene. I think I'm going to break up with him. What? Well, I think I have to. You'll never guess who asked me out. Who? Promise you won't laugh. What? Okay, Laura, I promise. I'll try. Who? Bob Tanner. You're joking. Stop laughing. But you said he was too tall. Well, he sort of stooped over when he asked me out. But I thought you and Eugene were finished. It just got stale, know what I mean? We were only going out together because we couldn't think of anything else to do. They've been going together for 2 weeks, Jenny thought, and it got stale? But she didn't say what she was thinking. Laura was so beautiful, she really could have any boy she wanted. But Jenny thought that it was kind of sad that Laura wanted them all. At the end of summer, Laura had broken up with Rick Danielson. That had lasted nearly 3 months, a long time for Laura. Since then, she'd gone out with at least 3 other guys. Now Eugene was about to get dumped. I'd settle for just one guy, Jenny thought, one serious guy. Again, she felt plain and boring compared to Laura. Why couldn't she stare at boys the way Laura did, or touch their shoulders all the time the way Laura did, or act real kittenish and sexy and not get embarrassed about it? She took another bite of pizza. It had no taste at all. Maybe the pizza oven did use artificial cheese. Ugh. So, are you keeping this job? Laura asked. The blonde boy in a bomber jacket had walked out with a tall, black-haired girl, so Laura's attention returned to Jenny. I guess so. Sure, Jenny said. They're paying me $5 an hour since it's so far away from my house. I can really use the money. I'll actually be able to buy people Christmas presents this year, and I can help Mom out a little. But you said the place was creepy, and you were scared to death. What with the weird neighbor and everything. It was all in my mind, Laura. It was all just me. I got terrified because I heard footsteps, and they turned out to be Donnie's footsteps. There wasn't anything to really be afraid of. The neighbor was perfectly fine, too. If I hadn't already been in such a state, he wouldn't have frightened me at all. I frightened myself, that's all. Next time, I'll be cool. And the kid isn't a monster? No, he's adorable. I think he'd like scaring the babysitter, though. It's sort of a game with him. I'm going to have to talk to him about that. But he's fine, just fine. His father's a bit of a basket case, though. Laura took a long sip of her Coke. What do you mean? He's just such a worrier. I guess those news stories about the attacks on babysitters have gotten him upset or something. I don't know. He drove me home, and all the way back he kept asking me, did it go okay? Was everything okay? Was Donnie okay? He must have asked me 24 times. Maybe he was just nervous because it was your first night. Yeah, maybe. Maybe he'll calm down. He's very devoted to Donnie. It's easy to see that, and his wife is really nice. She just makes jokes about how nervous Mr. Hagen is and what a worrier he is. I guess she's used to it. Well, it's rough, giving up all your Saturday nights, Laura said, looking toward the front as a group of Harrison kids came in, laughing loudly and shoving each other through the door. Not really, Jenny said. Not for me. She didn't mean to sound quite as gloomy as she did. She looked away. Did you save me any pepperoni? A boy's voice said nearby. Jenny and Laura both cried out. Where was the voice coming from? Suddenly, Chuck, a wide grin on his freckled face, pulled himself up from under their table. He looked very pleased that he had startled them both. He stopped about halfway up and rested his chin on the tabletop. Chuck, what were you doing down there? Laura shrieked. Nothing, just looking up your dress. His grin grew wider. His blue eyes actually seemed to light up, as if electricity had just been turned on. You idiot, Laura cried. Hey, I'm not wearing a dress. Then I don't know what I was doing down there, Chuck said. How long were you down there? Jenny asked, appalled at the thought that he may have been eavesdropping on their conversation, trying to remember if they'd said anything really embarrassing. Since Tuesday, I think. He pulled himself up and squeezed in beside Jenny. No, don't move, he told her. He put his arm around her shoulder. I'm comfortable like this. He beamed at her, 400 perfect white teeth in her face. Glad one of us is, Jenny said sarcastically. She took his hand with both of hers and lifted it off her shoulder. He had large hands, she noticed. He was a big guy. Big shoulders, powerful-looking arms. He looked like a football lineman or a wrestler. He grabbed up the rest of the pizza on her plate, a tiny sliver, mostly crust. Our first pizza together, he said, holding it up as if it were a prize. I'm going to rush home and paste this in my memory book. He stuffed it into his jeans pocket. I have a very messy memory book. Your mother must love to wash your jeans, Jenny said. I live with my dad. I wash my own jeans, Chuck said, surprising Jenny by saying something serious. I've got to get home, Laura said, starting to climb out of the narrow booth. Oh, no, Jenny protested. You're not leaving me here with him, are you? She meant it as a joke, Sort of. She hoped it came across that way. She looked at Chuck. He didn't seem hurt. Maybe he was used to having girls say that about him. I thought she'd never leave, he said loudly, ignoring Jenny's plea, and ignoring the fact that Laura hadn't left yet. He put his heavy arm back around Jenny's shoulder. Really, I've got to get home, Laura repeated, still not standing up. It's been real, Chuck said. Real gross. Jenny laughed. Laura gave her a surprised look. You think that's funny? It's pitiful. It's kind of funny, Jenny said. Chuck pulled the pizza crust from his pocket and ate it. Later, Laura said. She stood up, pulled on her maroon and white Harrison High sweatshirt and gave Jenny a meaningful look, and headed to the door. Jenny looked down at the red Formica top. Should she try to have a conversation with Chuck, or should she make an excuse and leave too? Was it possible to really talk to him, or would he just make non-stop jokes the whole time? How was she going to get his arm off her shoulder? It weighed at least a ton. Could you scoot over to the other side? She asked, deciding to try to talk with him for a short while. You want me to stay? He looked very surprised. He scratched his curly blonde hair and pulled himself around to the other side of the booth, so that he was facing her now. When did you move to Harrison? Jenny asked. It was a test question to see if he could be serious. My dad and I came here from Mars a little more than a month ago. Uh-oh. He was flunking the test. And what kind of spaceship did you fly in? Jenny asked, rolling her eyes. Did you come to defeat our planet, or on a peace mission, or what? No, really, he insisted. We came from Mars. It's just north of Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania. You're putting me on, right? He laughed. He had a dimple in his right cheek when he laughed. With the curly blonde hair and all the freckles on his face, he looked like Huck Finn. Jenny decided he was kind of cute, but also kind of goofy looking. He raised his right hand. I swear, I come from Mars. You can look it up on any map. It's near Frisco. Near San Francisco? No, near Frisco. Frisco, Pennsylvania. He raised his hand again. No joke. I'll swear on my mother's grave. Your mother's dead? Well, no. They both laughed. I still think you're putting me on, Jenny said. I'll bring you a map of Pennsylvania. I'll prove it to you. It's a real tiny town. It's on the old Baltimore and Ohio Railroad line. There's not much there. The name is the only interesting thing about the place. There must be something wrong with me. I'm starting to believe you, Jenny said. Chuck just smiled back at her. The waitress interrupted to ask if they wanted anything else. Chuck ordered a pepperoni pizza. That should be enough for me. Can I get you anything? He asked. Make it 2, Jenny joked. The waitress wrote it down on her pad and disappeared. Hey, wait, Jenny called after her. But the waitress couldn't hear over the raucous shouting and laughing from the kids in the front booth. Wow, she thought I was serious, Jenny said to Chuck. So did I, he grinned. The joke's on you, Jenny grinned back. I don't have any money. Chuck leaped out of the booth and went running up to the front counter. Cancel that pizza. Hey, cancel the pizza. On his way back, he stopped at the front booth to talk to the kids from Harrison. He's amazing, Jenny told herself. Only in school a couple of weeks and he knows everybody. Or at least, everyone seems to know who he is. She couldn't hear what Chuck was saying, but she could hear a lot of laughing coming from the booth. He was making jokes as usual. When he squeezed himself back into their booth, she was surprised to see that he had a serious look on his face. Are you busy Saturday night? He asked, not looking at her, looking down at the red Formica tabletop. Yes, she replied. That's good, because so am I. He exploded in laughter. It sounded forced to Jenny. He's really disappointed, she thought, and he's covering it up by making a joke. She realized she had just learned something important about him. Were you really asking me out? She asked, a bold question for her, but she really wanted to know. He looked down again. Yeah. Well, I'd like to go out with you sometime, she said, surprised that she could say these things, that she could talk so easily to him. I babysit on Thursday and Saturday nights. Then how about Saturday morning? He asked, brightening. We could get up early and watch cars being washed at a quick wash. We could pretend it was one of those beach movies. Jenny laughed. I don't think so. I've got a better idea. He was tapping the table with his big hands, nervous, his brain in high gear. I'll come by on Saturday night when you're babysitting. No. Bad idea, Jenny said quickly. Was that a yes? No. It was a no. He cupped his ear with one hand. What? I can't hear you. You said yes. No. I said no, she shouted, even though she knew he could hear perfectly well. What time should I come by? I said no, I don't want you to do that. Please, don't beg. I'll come. 9 o'clock too late? Chuck? She hated the peevish tone in her voice, but she couldn't help it. He was really being annoying. Don't you know when to stop? No. When? That's what I'm asking. When should I stop by? She got up angrily. You're not funny. Who's being funny? I'm serious. Was he deliberately trying to drive her away? She had really enjoyed talking with him, and she was beginning to feel really attracted to him. She thought she had been able to get past his constant joking and fooling around, but now he was deliberately being obnoxious. Why was he trying to make her angry? Because she had rejected him? I've got to go, she said quickly, gathering up her down jacket and backpack. Well, when you've got to go, he said with a shrug. Hey, what about your pizza? Put it in your memory book, she said, and, pleased that she was able to think of a good parting line, turned and walked quickly from the restaurant.